The time has come for us to test our front-end code in our Google Apps Script IDE. Now, typically most of my app script development, and it's fairly typical of most developers, is to do all your front-end development off the Google Apps Script IDE because it's hard to test and hard to write scripts without seeing errors that you can't see where the error came from. So typically I'll pull it down into CLASP, which is the command line tool that allows you to code locally. Or if it's a little script, I might just copy and paste it into my text editor and do all of my development and testing there using something like live service. Now, there does come a point, like I just mentioned, where we have to get all this back into the IDE to give it a final test. The problem is it can be a bit messy to do and find out where all the bugs are. So this is the purpose of this tutorial. As you can see here, I've created a little app that has a modal, has a sidebar, and also has a web app in it. And we're going to give it a bit of a spin to see where the errors are and see if we can give it a fix from our Google Apps Script IDE. And I'm going to show you a couple of hints and tricks that might make life a little bit easier for you in your testing. So if you want to play along, and I encourage that you do, you can find a copy of the starter script in the link in the description below. From here, all you need to do is to go to File, make a copy, and you have your very own version of this script. Now, if you want to dive into the code, which is great, and you'll probably need this up anyway. So let's just go ahead and maybe delete some tabs for now. We can create these again in a minute, so to get you all set up. And let's just go into extensions and app script. So we have our app script there, and have a quick look at the important stuff of our code. So basically we've got an on open, we've got a do get to run our web app, and our on app open allows us to open up our display modal and display sidebar, which is in an object here. And then we're just getting some details. We're going to convert your email into a @z code art. Now you could do this from the front end, but I wanted to show that we can push and pull from the back end as well as part of our testing. So the important part is in our index here. So over on our pretty little index side, we have a very, very simple style and body tag followed by some scripts that allow us to do actions on success and on failure. This is basically what we'll be testing. Now there is a cheeky little Easter egg in this that we'll cover in a minute. So follow along towards the end and we will initialize that Easter egg. Okay, so the next little thing we need to do is to make sure we have a web app enabled as well. So we're going to go over to deploy here and click on new deployment. And you could deploy as yourself and who has access only yourself. But if you want to share this bad boy with your friends and family, you can change this to other people. So you can deploy as user accessing the web and anyone with a Google account. So that means when they access, they will get their own @z art of their email. Let's hit deploy. Okay, so because we're in testing mode and we've got a little web app URL here, this is the finally generated web app. So any changes that we're going to make to our code, it won't be reflected in this executable here. We need to update this and redeploy it. So what we can do is we go up to deploy here and look at test deployments. And we've got a web app here, and here is our cheeky little test deployment. And you'll see the URL ends in dev, and that suggests it's a test deployment. So we're just going to copy that one here, and we'll go over and hit Control V and paste. Okay, so now we're looking at the verification process here. So obviously unverified, we haven't gone through Google's verification process to approve this app. It's a little personal job. So we're going to hit review permission, click on the name, click continue, head on down to allow. This might be slightly different for you if you're on a personal account, but there it is. There's our app. Okay, we have success. It's working. And now let's just give it a test in our Google Sheet. Let's go with the sidebar first. And you can see it takes a little time as it's going back to Google Apps Script server side and generating the @z art and pushing it back up. And we can also open in a modal as well. Nice. One of the issues that we're going to face here, and it's very prevalent in a container-bound Google Apps Script project. So what I mean by that is like a Google Apps Script that's bound to a sheet, docs, or slides. is that it's really hard to find where your code is. So what we're going to do is use our Google Chrome developer tools here, and you can get into that by a number of ways. I'm running on a PC, so I'm going to use those shortcuts. Mac users, you can do the mental rotation to get those shortcuts for your own, but I can hit F12 here or Control-Shift-C, and this will get me my developer tools. Now, if we just look at the raw data here, it's quite challenging to find out where our scripts actually lives. So one of the simplest approaches that you can do is just to go in and click on this little select element button. Now, you don't want to burrow in too far, but you can see as I expand in the Elements tab in the Developer Tools below that we're getting close to our HTML. So once we hit that, see that doc type down there? I'm going to click that, and that's going to get us to this doc type. And if I expand this, open up our head, we can see we've got a couple of things in here. We've got a style sheet, body, margin, pre. If we go into our code here, I'll just hit done. We've just got a very simple style sheet, body with a margin, pre, font size, blah, blah. So this is looking very promising. And then if we go into our body, we'll see the find me, which is highlighting here, which is great. We've got our preview response here, and we've got our script information here. Now, likewise, we can access this from the sidebar. So if we're over here, we're going to go, we might have to close this for now. So we'll close this, hit our tag, and head over here. Now we're in an iframe. You can see things highlighting in the top right corner here. So we've nailed it. There's our head. These are our styles. Good. And here's our body. Nice. And our scripts here. Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted to see. Okay, likewise, when we go into our web apps, very similar. I'm going to hit F12 this time. And I'm just going to go up and click on this tool, this select element tool. And I'm going to click this outer range here. And there it is. There's our data. Sweet. Okay. So I hope by now you've paused and gone ahead and run the app and you've got everything up and running. You're testing out those few things. So let's have a explore in the web app because it's a bit easier. Let's have an explore where this data lies. Now, for Google Apps Scripts, our data is found within an iframe. And it's not just a iframe, it's bound in multiple iframes. So if you can see here, we've got our main HTML of this overarching page here. And this burrows down into its first level of iframe, which is sort of a sandbox to contain the web app that we're hosting. And then further down again inside that iframe is another one, which is actually hosting the script that we wrote here. So this is a second iframe here. Now, there's another layer of abstraction when it comes to these container-bound scripts. So my example is obviously in Google Sheets, but it pertains to other areas as well. So if we go up here and we look at our iframe tree, so we've got a bunch of divs and all that craziness here. So we've got a couple of iframes doing things up here, but essentially if we look at our tree start, we've got an iframe here for our sidebar, then another iframe here for our sidebar, and another iframe here, which actually gets us into the data we need. So there's a third level of abstraction of iframes as it's overlaying on top of our Google Sheets here. Okay, so you have probably noticed on the right-hand side that we've got some red X's and some exclamation marks and weirdness going on here. So this is identifying an error. So I'm going to click on this here to identify an error. And if we can't see what's going on, we could click on this console here, which is very handy, or you can move the console up from below and you can see the errors. Now, another thing you can do if you're unhappy with keeping things the way they are in this type of layout, you can change where the Google Developer Tools is docked. So it could be on the left-hand side here like this, right-hand side, or it can be undocked, so taken out. So I've got this on a separate screen now. Here it is here. I can play on this and I can work in a second screen. Or we can keep it down the bottom. I think down the bottom's fine for this tutorial. Now, one of the issues that we really need to face is that we've got a error warning here. And this is likely related to us doing something silly rather than the script just being a bit of a mess. Now, we've already got some warnings. These are just Chrome yelling at Google Apps Script saying, you're not doing things the way I want you to do them, which is funny because it's the same company. That's for another story. Now, if we go over to our error log here, we can see that there is one error here, and it's really strange. It says can't read properties of undefined with balloons handler. Now, with balloons handler seems really unusual, doesn't it? Now, if we were to burrow in and click on one of these locations here, that's just going to take us to somewhere really bizarre. It's this obfuscated script that we don't really know what's going on. Now, this is essentially in a compiler for Google Apps Script sidebar and dialog apps or web apps that Google runs to help us display all our pretty little scripts. However, on the right-hand side, you might see something that says VM. Now, if it does say VM, you're possibly looking at a virtual machine or a virtual environment that displays our code. If we click on this, we can go over here and we can see Google Script Fun with Balloons Handler. And if we scroll up a little bit, let's make this a bit bigger, you can see the rest of our code here. So that's pretty funky. So that's managed to navigate us to where we needed to go. Now, this error doesn't always come up the correct way or the way you want it to come up, and may report a different link on the right hand side here. So just give it another refresh and see what comes up. Now we could do the same thing again in our web app here, where we've got our errors log here. It's come up in errors. It also come up in our basic messages as well. There it is there. We'll go back to our errors and we can click the location, and there's our pesky little bug. So we can now head back to our code and close that, go into extensions, app script. Now you'll notice here, this is line 42. Let's see if line 42 matches up, eh? Head down to our index, line 42. No, that's something different. So those lines aren't going to match, but we did get a good hint that this Google Script Fun was present. So we're going to go ahead and find that. So this is a bug, so you can delete this out. It's safe. Now remember, if you have dev mode on, this will refresh and the bug should vanish. As you can see, no more bug. And the same will occur in the sidebar apps as well. So if we just move this down a little bit and hit open modal and clear out our little bug doobly-doo. No more bugs there. Open sidebar. No bugs there. Fantastic. So last little tip that we could use if we're sort of debugging and trying to figure out things is, hey, maybe I want to run one of my scripts that I have in my code. For example, I've got this find me function here. I was like, oh, I can't remember what it does. Let's see, why isn't it working the way I expect it to be working, for example? So if I go back to, let's go back to our sheet, and I go into the console, which I am in, and I type in find me, you can see the function is present, but we've got an error, uncaught reference. So find me is not defined. But so wait a minute, it's right here. I've defined it in the function, and which is very strange. However, the issue is that this is looking inside the window, the parent window of this web page, instead of into the iframe. So we need to get ourselves there. Now, there's a couple of ways to get ourselves there, but this is the one we learned at the start of this tutorial. We're going to click again on the select element pane, head over to here. And once I clicked over here and selected this element, not only did it get us to this section in our elements tab, but it also navigated us here in our context menu. Now, inside our context menu, we should be able to run our function again. We can say find me, and actually appears this time. So there it is, tab, and we'll close it, and we'll go ahead and hit enter. And there we go. So we hit enter, and things changed on our right hand side here. Okay, let's go ahead and do the same in our web app very quickly. So another approach is that we know that our web apps are contained in user HTML iframe, and we can confirm that because the screen goes blue when we click on it. So let's head over to there. So if I now type in find me, you can see auto completes there, which is great, and hit enter. Then our cute little goat appears here. Perfect. Okay, so there's 2 tips to help you out with your Chrome developer tools when you're trying to debug your code once you finally put it in your Apps Script IDE. Let me know if you have any other tips for debugging in the Chrome developer tools with Google Apps Script. And if you've enjoyed this tutorial, please hit that like button. And if you want to see more tutorials like this, subscribe. Until next time.